up a bed with diamonds, and I hope the diamonds gonna last. No bullet to stop us now. We need to beg, but we won't bow.
Hi fellow knitters, welcome to my colorwork series. In this video I'm going to show you how to change colors and simultaneously weave in the ends. When you change colors, typically in stripe work or in fair isle knitting, that's one of the things that you have to do is weave in your ends, and you usually do that at the end. But of course weaving in ends is not something that I like to do. It's not something that a lot of people like to do at the end of their work. So in this video, I'll show you how to do that effectively, and that way you won't have ends to weave in at the very end. So I'm doing some stripe work here. As you can see, I've got kind of a gray tone here in this first section, and then in the second section I have this kind of this bright purple color, and then of course I then switch back to the gray section. And so I'm going to show you how to do that. Now I actually have a piece here that I've already done that for. And this is what we call the wrong side of the work, or the side that you purl on. And if you look here in this column right here, you can see where I've changed colors and also weaved in the ends. And I'll show you how to do that. And basically what you're doing is you're knitting in your ends. Okay, so as you can see here, I have two balls of wool. This ball is what I was working on in this section, or from this ball, and as you can see I've cut away the knitting, the actual piece from this ball. So we won't be using this ball anymore, or at this time, and I'm actually going to switch back to this ball here that I was using here in this second section. So what you're going to do is you're going to insert your needle into that last stitch, like so. And then you're going to take your new ball and you're just going to kind of drape it across the right needle and then knit it through. Now this last stitch here, as you can see, is kind of elongated. I usually like to give it a little tug, and when I come back to this, I'll actually give it another tug. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the tail and you're going to go into the second needle, the second stitch on the left needle, and you're going to drape that tail over that needle. And then you're going to take the actual working yarn and swing it over the needle. And then you're going to take this yarn and the tail and swing it away from, or out from that needle. Okay, so that's stitch 2. And then stitch 3, we're just going to knit as normal. And then stitch 4, we go in and we take the tail and we draw it around the needle, and then take the working yarn as if to knit, but swing this out of the way, the tail. Because if you don't swing it out of the way, you're going to actually knit both of them through, and then you've actually just increased a stitch, which you don't want to do. So swing it out of the way and then complete that knit stitch. So that's 4. And then we have 5, and then 6, drape the tail over, take your working yarn, and then move the tail out of the way. So that's 6. 7 is just a regular knit stitch. So as you can see, I'm going every other stitch with the tail. And as you can see on the back, I've definitely carried the tail across 8 stitches. So you're doing this on the even numbered stitches. That's where you're carrying your tail. It's very similar to carrying a float when you're doing fair isle knitting. So this is stitch 9, knit it as normal. And then stitch 10, drape your tail over, and then your working yarn, and then move the tail out of the way. And then I just continue knitting all the way down as I normally would. So I usually weave the tail in 9 to 10 stitches. And of course this is wool, so they're going to stay in there. They're definitely not going anywhere. Even if you're working with acrylic yarn, same thing. When you weave it in that fashion, it's not coming out. It's snug in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish knitting this row, and I'm going to purl all the way back, and then I'll show you what to do next. Okay, so I'm almost finished with row 2. I'm on the wrong side of the work. I'm purling back to the knit, or to get back to the knit position. And as you can see, here's that tail, that first tail that we wove in. So here's the second to the last stitch. I'm going to show you what to do with the very last stitch. So as you can see here, here's the tail to the previous section. And I just give it a little tug like that because it was kind of open before. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to purl the last stitch with both the working yarn and the tail to the previous section. And the reason why I do that is to actually bring that tail up one row. And then you turn your work, and of course you see you have an extra stitch on there. All you have to do is go into the gray one, or the previous section of the same color, and then just slip it through. And as you can see, it has been brought up by one row, and now we're going to weave this one in as we go back across. So with stitch 1, you insert your needle, put the tail over the needle, take your working yarn, give it a little tug, and then swing the tail out of the way. So that's stitch 1. Stitch 2 is just knitted as normal. Stitch 3, bring the tail over, and then your working yarn, and then swing the tail out of the way. Stitch 4. Stitch 5, bring your tail over, and then swing it out of the way. And stitch 6. So as you can see in this row, we're actually working with the tail with the odd numbered stitches. And then stitch number 8, knit as normal. Actually, that's stitch number 7. So stitch number 7, we have to swing the tail over, and then the working yarn, and then stitch 8, knit it as normal, and stitch 9, swing your tail over the needle, and then go around with your working yarn, and then swing the tail out of the way. And then stitch 10, and so on. So the tail has been carried along this row. And so I'm just going to continue knitting all the way down. Now on the back, when you've finished this section and you're ready to switch again, what I usually do is I tie them together. That. And then I snip them about a centimeter away from the work. Now you don't have to tie it in a knot. Some people, actually most people probably don't, and you can still just snip like I just did a centimeter from your work and just leave the little tails hanging out. I just want added security with regard to the tails, and so I always tie them in a little knot like that, like a little bow tie. So that is how you change colors when you're doing color work or striped work, while also at the same time weaving in your ends. Nobody wants to weave in a ton of ends at the end of your work, so I just do it that way. So again, thank you for watching my video. Please do subscribe to my channel. Please also do provide feedback and comments. I welcome all of them and I always respond. So again, thank you for watching.